So yeah, maybe we should kick off while people are maybe going to be joining. So let me do a quick intro. So I'm Frank Saunders. I've been around this beautiful company called Watergraph.com. I look after our client partnerships here at Watergraph. Our company is about 70 people in terms of size. We're based in Europe, in Netherlands. And what we do is we aggregate a ton of data, be that Google, Facebook, Snapchat. We visualize that and provide live dashboards, reports, etc. Particularly working with a ton of agencies across the world, North America, Europe. In this particular webinar, we're going to be talking about using proposal data to increase agency win rates. And naturally, Proposify comes to mind. So we got Patrick here who's going to introduce himself, and also Bill talk about his experience using Proposify and how that has helped the business. Over to you guys.
Awesome. I can kick it off. Thanks so much, Frank. My name is Patrick. Like Frank said, Chief Marketing Officer at Proposify. We are online proposal software that helps our customers get control and visibility over their proposal process and use data to increase their win rate. So that's what we're here to talk about today. Share some of the that information that might be behind a curtain for some people, and share what the averages are, what the data is telling us of what a winning proposal looks like. So hopefully you can take some of those insights away and use them for yourselves. Bill.
And I'm Bill Russell. I'm the Chief Sales Officer for One SEO. We are a full service digital marketing agency here in the States. Google Premier Partner, been around for about 12 years, been utilizing Proposify for the last 3.5, and very excited to talk about some of the insights that we see as it applies to our agency and how utilizing Proposify has helped us to be more efficient and effective.
Fantastic. It's 3.5 years. It's been some time, so I bet there's multiple insights, Bill, that you can provide on that. Patrick, I'm going to pass over the mouse over to you, maybe to share on the kind of some of the insights that you prepared. You should
Awesome.
have both of the deck right now.
Let's do it. Just testing. There we go. So we are going to share some information from this document here that you can see on your screen. It's called the State of Proposals. We release this at least once every year, and we're going to be looking to update the data much more frequently. But what this looks like is over 2.6 million sales documents that we've analyzed, over 500,000 just in 2020 alone. If you're looking for extra deeper information, you can check that out at proposify.com from State of Proposals. But I'm going to try and give you the high level here today so that you get as much to action those insights as you possibly can. So without further ado, we're just going to get into it, and I'd love to grab Frank and Bill's insights on their experiences as we go through some of this data and information. So the first one is we've surveyed a bunch of sales professionals as well, just to ask this question, like, does proposal design matter? Well, 62 plus 33, it's almost 90 some plus percent either agree or strongly agree that well-designed sale documents are important to closing deals. And the next stat we just have is really just to bolster that, is that we looked into our database and proposals themselves. Just the fact that them having an image in them, so they're not a black and white sort of contract, hopefully not using Comic Sans in your documents, but a well-designed professional document can increase close rates by 26%. Bill and Frank, I'm wondering, what have you seen on your side? What sort of documents either come across your desk or that you're sending out?
Go ahead, Frank.
Go on, Bill.
So one of the things that we've tried to do is implement into our proposals a lot of images that will give our prospective opportunities the ability to be able to grasp value and concept to what we have going on at any point in the proposal, so that we can utilize infographics as far as what makes us as an agency much more valuable to that person in helping to close the ratio from the time that the proposal is sent to the close ratio, and inside that general 24 hours, it really helps in adding value to what we're trying to utilize from almost a 3-dimensional perspective versus just a 2-dimensional perspective of the proposal going on.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, likewise. I mean, images or anything that's visual, any sort of graphics or videos that we really love adding to within the proposal to explain that proposal. really helps to increase the win rate. I believe we're seeing around sort of 30-40% lift when we sort of provide sort of visual guidance in any way. That definitely drives significantly higher conversion rate and also decreases the sales cycle. So yeah.
Well, that's great. You set us up right there, Frank, for the next kind of stat is that videos are being used way more and more and often. So we're talking about graphics, but let's talk about motion graphics. Let's talk about people and humans moving on the screen. And so the number of documents that are being sent with video in them are going up year over year. That might be YouTube Vimeo or something sales tool like Vidyard. Embedding those right within your documents is becoming much more popular. I think there's a lot of reasons for that in the last year, obviously with working remotely, but I think there's benefits of that regardless. But I'm curious, I know, Bill, you use videos in your proposals. Wondering if you could give the listeners some insights.
Yeah, one of the things that we found is that, creating that value proposition of past the sale of where it is and being able to say, okay, what does the client, and that opportunity have once you've sent them over? They don't have you anymore. And so what we've tried to do is do two different perspectives. Is we as an agency, we want Google to sell us. So we have some content that from Google speaking about us as an agency and what makes us one of the top 1% of Google agencies out there. But then what we also look to do is utilize video testimonials of our performance from our existing clients within the proposal itself that helps that person understand that they're very similar to the type of nature of our clients, which helps the close ratio. We wrap it all up by utilizing, as you said, Vidyard, as a tool to supplement what we're doing so that we can walk you through that proposal as well. So there's really three different parts of video content that we utilize to help increase the ratio of what we're doing. Number one is Google talking about us. Number two, our clients talking about us. And then number three, being able to walk them through the proposal itself by utilizing Vidyard.
Yeah, in our case, when we utilize videos, we also want to kind of position ourselves as sort of the extended team, really. So when we're working with sort of agencies and brands out there, so it definitely helps not just to walk through the proposal, but align on what's the sort of the best fit really for the client that we're working with in terms of the features that they want to get or the service they want to get from us, etc. But it also helps us to act more of as a consultant really in the process. And that's what we've seen, especially, with the videos as well, working really well for us. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Someone recently told me, and I agree with this, is that sometimes the proposal isn't even for your main contact. It's for other people at the organization as well, because you might not be able to get in front of the financial lead or the chief financial officer. You might not be able to get to the CEO or somebody else that could be a key decision maker in that process. And so they don't get to go on the Zoom call. You might not be able to meet them in person. And so as much as the proposal is for your key stakeholder in the sales cycle, it's also could be for many other people in the organization that you haven't been able to build that relationship with, that you have the benefit of building a sales relationship over time with some individuals and not sometimes with others. So that's a good recommendation I've heard about using video. Awesome. So this is a sticky one. I've heard this from different people, is that it depends on like, oh no, don't, I have to send a big, long, massive document, 30 plus pages. I don't know why some people will hold on to their long sales documents, but the average winning proposal with our data is 11 pages. I honestly think sometimes that's a little bit long. It depends on what you're selling. I completely agree as to what goes into that document, but wondering if you've received or sent a massive sort of document, how often do you read that whole thing? I wonder if Phil or Frank, you've got any insight there.
I've just received very recently a proposal from an agency, and I think they also use Proposify. So it was 20 pages long. Did I read it through? No, I don't have time to read it through. And I think most of the folks out there don't really have time to read more than a couple pages really, when it comes to a proposal. So what's, I think the most important stuff has to be in sort of on page 1, 2, and then rest is, it isn't for me as a sort of potentially the decision maker, right? So I want to definitely get the summary right at the top, see, whether that makes sense, and then everything else is, I think, for the rest of my team to digest yeah. So I would say I've seen very long proposals do their work. I think depending who reads it, right? So within the organization.
Yeah, I think that before working with Proposify, I think our agreement was 42 pages 5 years ago. And because what we wanted to do was be able to give as much insight, and so we didn't have the data to support what people were really truly looking at. And we found that utilizing some of the statistics, the investment page was really the page that people spent the most amount of time on in the way that we've structured ours from the fee tables. And so everything else really didn't matter other than signature page and investment. So we've cut it down because you have to give some deliverables that you're putting in from an SEO or PPC or social media standpoint as far as what you're delivering for the client. But we've limited down, and I think we're at 9 right now. And most of that 9 is legalese because of what we do from a credit card billing standpoint. But it's a much better, efficient, effective method to have a much shorter proposal because nobody is reading all the fluff.
Yeah, you think about how many tools we have as marketers of website optimization and like seeing what people do on the site, and it's like, well, if you're not going to have a massively long landing page if that doesn't convert higher than a short one, for example, but let the data really tell you what works or what doesn't, and that's what I love seeing is optimizing their documents for closing, understanding that some of that the legalese needs to be there, needs to cover you and cover the client, and a lot of times there's a life cycle to these documents where people will need to refer to that information later. So it needs to be included. But in terms of optimizing for sale and optimizing for the close, there's certain kind of ways you can organize your document to get that a little bit better. So I love that.
One caveat to that is that when you look at specifically where that client is going through and spending time within the proposal itself, it really helps the sales team member be able to understand what objections they potentially could be coming in the follow-up and close. And so we try to utilize that to get it right out of the gate. Listen, I know that you spent the most amount of time on the investment page. So what questions do you have about the pricing that we can hit right off the bat? So it just helps overall understanding where to navigate that next aspect of the sales call and make it more efficient in getting the close happen.
Yeah. Definitely. To the next one, I'm not going to go to the next slide right away, but I want to get maybe some people can chat in on their opinions of this, and I'll hear this too. It's like, what would be better? Someone going back and viewing your document a bunch of times? Is that really exciting to see, like, oh my gosh, they looked at it like 10, 20 times, or is maybe less better? What do you think, Frank?
Well, so I think it depends on the size of the organization, right? So if I'm selling into an organization that has 1,000+ employees, I would expect, probably, at least sort of, 5+ people kind of reading through the proposal, right? And I would love to be sort of tracking, I'm seeing, 5 different people accessing the proposal. What are the sections that they're reading through? Is it all the legal stuff? Is it the investment? Is it, what is it? So that, when you're, jumping on the follow-up call, you're kind of focusing on those areas and trying to figure out whether there's sort of any outstanding questions, kind of reducing that path, so that any frictions that it might be, right, to get to close. So I would, it really depends on the size of the organization. If I'm selling into a company that, where there's only like 20 employees or something, then if one person looks at it, then that's fine for me. And so I assume it's, let's say the CFO of the company, right? Whoever's the decision maker on their end. So as long as I can see that from a tracking standpoint, who is the actual person that's accessing the proposal, and if it's the key person on their end, then that's all I need, really. That's the way I see it. But sometimes you want to make sure also you have the backing from the wider team, right? So not just, the top guy in the organization who's going to sign it off, but also from the wider team. So because I was saying, I would probably read through sort of page 1 and 2, maybe 3, but then the rest of the pages are not necessarily for me, but it's for the rest of the team, right? Does it make sense for them? Do they agree that what's being put on the table, that's what we should get? So I usually get, a lot of input from my team before I make a final call, right? So I want them to go to read through the proposal as well.
Well, let's get to the data. Oops, I went one too far. Spoiler alert, it's actually proposals that don't close usually get more attention than those do. Now, this is on average, and I definitely agree with Frank. If you've got a big team that you're sending it to and you want more eyes on it, then that can be a good thing. But on average, it's proposals that are viewed 2.5 times have the highest kind of close rate. But after 3.5 times and beyond that, the close rate actually diminishes. And the thing that we found through talking with our customers that have experienced this too is that if there is an issue, that's the reason they might be going back or checking with it. Or if it isn't just like a quick close like you might want in a sales cycle, if you've done your due diligence as a salesperson and explained to the stakeholders and everyone that needs to have the decisions, then the document sometimes can speak for itself. Like, yep, this is what I wanted. This is verification. Okay. Quick close in 1 or 2 views. But if they need to keep going back about like, oh, can you change this term and condition here? This isn't what we talked about in our discussion. That's when you start to get more and more views on the document. So it's really about just your sales cycle and how effective are you of selling through it? How clear is the document? Is it easy to understand? Is it what they were expecting in that sort of thing? And the data backs that sort of mentality up. Wondering if you experienced that, Bill.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to go back to the earlier question that you had asked Frank, and I think that when I get notifications on my app, as far as where it's the best notification that I get throughout the course of the day, it blows away Instagram, Facebook, or anything of those, Twitter. It keeps me excited about where we are through the process. Sometimes and what we try to teach our sales team here is that when you see that proposal being opened up a multitude of times, that's a great opportunity to help, because if you're right, unsuccessful proposals are getting opened up much more. Utilize that as an engagement opportunity to get back in front of the client to say, hey, listen, I see that you're opening up the proposal a bunch of times. How can I help answer any questions that you have, versus allowing them to sit back and not have that intelligence and data to be able to say, what are you thinking? Okay, so that I can help you make that decision to choose us versus choosing somebody else. So we look at it on both ends and say, the more that it gets open is good, because it allows us to know that you are engaging and you haven't said no yet, as well as being in a situation where it also gives us the opportunity to get back in front of the client to be able to help them with their situations of better understanding what we're trying to provide for a solution for them.
Oh, I love that.
Just want to add, for us, it's vice versa. If we don't see people opening up the proposal, it rings the alarm bells. Why nobody is opening it up. So, and sometimes the email or the proposal goes into the spam box. That's why.
That's a great point, because one of the first things that when I wake up and and I'm getting my day started, I'm looking at what proposals were sent the day before and that they haven't been read. Because if they haven't been read in that first 4 hours that you sent it, almost 99% of the time it dropped into spam because of the security features that companies have today. And so, it's a great opportunity to reach back out to that client to be able to do. One of the things that we'll also do from our angle is that when we get that first notification that's been opened, we'll use that as an opportunity to reach back out to the client just to say, hey, I want to make sure you got it, when I already know the fact is that you have received it. And it can get right into the engagement questions that happen within the proposal right then and there, live time. So there's so much good behavior that can come out of being able to look at the data to support where you're taking the sales cycle.
I love that. It's that the dopamine hit when you get the notification is great, but it's also saves you from the crossing your fingers and hoping it's going to close as well when you don't get that notification.
Absolutely.
All right, let's keep going here. This was a big one last year with in a year of, with obviously COVID across the world, businesses, some shutting down, some pulling back budget, being more conservative with spend, we got this question all the time. It's like, well, how did that impact deals and maybe moving forward? And we actually saw a major increase in people discounting last year, 91%. Increase in proposals that included a discount, so almost doubling. And it didn't necessarily result in that many more closed deals. So it felt to me kind of like a Hail Mary throw from a lot of companies. It's like, well, I just need to make some revenue right now, so I'm gonna heavily discount and see if it works. My opinion is I think there are strategic ways to use discounting because everyone loves to get a deal, but it shouldn't come at the expense of your bottom line, or it's probably not going to be your main tactic, or at least that's not what the data is telling us. But I'm really curious to see, Bill, what you've tried or used, and Frank, if you had an experience as well in discounting.
Stateside, if you look in 2020 through March, April, and May, we were in a position as an organization that we took a major hit because of what was happening around, obviously, the Northeast and shutdowns happening. And so we asked that of our partners. And that word is very different in a lot of different places around the world, a vendor versus a partner. And because we asked of that, we extended that same opportunity to say, we want to work with you, but we also didn't want to affect our existing businesses, that to say, oh, I'm going to give this guy a discount at 30% when this other guy who's thriving because he's an HVAC guy and he's an essential worker, he doesn't get that 30%. So we really tried to look at vertically based how businesses that we work with were being effective. However, as soon as the opportunity that, and I know it's a little bit different in Nova Scotia and lockdown there versus what we have going on here stateside, is that there was so much pent up demand from the back half of the year. We didn't need to discount our product in order for us to grow because everybody else was saying, I need to grow right now because I've been in shutdown for the last 90 days. So, for us, we really tried to say, how do we work with people to get them through that? And people were very appreciative, and it was, and that happened to us as far as our vendor partners saying, you know what, we're going to give you a 50% discount for the next 3 months because we know you just took a huge hit, but then let's get it back on track, And so we worked with everybody to be able to do that. As far as new businesses go, our agency is a little bit different because we have so much heavy lifting on the front end of our engagements that it would be almost impossible and bad for business for us to have that heavy discount aspect starting off.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, there was a ton of uncertainty, I think, all around the world, and particularly also in Europe and the US. And I think discounting was just a mechanism to ensure that the conversion rate is stable, right? So because even here at Watercraft, we saw a major dip in terms of conversion rate. So we knew the uncertainty is out there, and people didn't want to go ahead with partnering up, right? So just let's wait for another half a year or something, right? So discounting definitely was a good mechanism for us and many other businesses that I know, and that just to ensure that we kept essentially those deals going and getting them to a close. So I would say, I can definitely relate to the trend, but yeah, I wouldn't expect naturally the conversion rate go up. I just I think most businesses out there want to make sure it does, that there's no dip for a very long time, right, in terms of conversion rate.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of a temporary tactic for last year, and that's what the data was telling us. So take that data for what it's worth and maybe apply it for yourself.
Yeah, I would say this year, I think it's going to be very, very different, where we're not doing as much discounting as we used to do, let's say last year. And I think that applies for a ton of businesses out there as well. That there just isn't a need anymore because post-COVID, or it's the new norm, right? Things are going back to normal, right? So we're also seeing that normality and no need to discount. Right? So.
Definitely. Bill, you brought up e-signatures earlier, and these are the stats on here. And the biggest thing I like to highlight here is really just that when you sign and they sign, obviously your conversion rate is going to go up. This one is a really bit of a fancy metric, but the tip I usually get out of this information is to sign your proposals before you send it to them. If there's a dual signature required, one from you and one from them, put your signature on it before you even go. It shows what you're like extra committed. I'm good to go. Just there. As soon as they sign off, it's a done deal. There's no like waiting back and forth. It's signed and sealed at that sort of point moving forward. And obviously we're in an age where printing, scanning, faxing, mailing things is not the norm anymore either. So it's making the buying journey easy on your customer. Make it as simple for them to buy as possible. Don't make them jump through any hoops. You're trying to work with them and make that as easy as possible. And so that's what e-signatures, in my opinion, really do for people, is just make it so when the deal is ready to be done, there's nothing in the way to closing.
I haven't thought about this, but actually, yeah, I would usually wait for the client to sign first before we sign it. How do you do it on your end, Bill?
Ours is not, we don't do dual signatures as far as with regards to our proposal. It's a single signature. However, the point is that we live in such a friction environment. There's so many things coming at us at any given point in time. To be able to isolate to a single proposal, single signature page, really increase the overall efficiency and effectiveness of our close ratio. I can't think of the number of times where people will be like, can you send over the signature page? And I'm like, it's already included in the proposal itself. And so it just makes it so much more effective to be able to have the client authorize right then and there. And we actually take it to the next level with our credit card payments that we take through the signature page as well.
Yeah, interesting. But that's a good insight there, Patrick.
Yeah, no, just a quick tip for people. We've seen it work for a lot of different people. And Bill, you brought this up a little bit earlier too, when you get the notifications or when you don't get the notifications, the age-old question, like, does time really kill all deals? And the data actually tells us that it does. And the average time create to close 24 hours, and 42%, a little less than half, are won within that 24 hours of opening. So if you're not hearing something right away, it is a good thing to follow up and make sure that there isn't something else going on. Were they just on vacation that day? Did something else happen that took them away from it? It is a possible touch point and a legitimate reason to reach out and start that sales conversation. And anything that you can do to speed up that time from getting it into their hands, that's really what we see as well. So I don't know if anyone's been on like a sales call and they say like, oh yeah, I'll get that to you by the end of the week, or worse, I'll get that to you next week, something like that. It's like, it's just adding friction, adding time into the sales cycle, when if it was a good call and they understood the value and they're basically ready to, if they gave the thumbs up, you want the time between that verbal agreement and the official agreement to be as short as humanly possible. I've even seen customers that they'll send the document on the call, and they will have edited the little bits and pieces that need to be edited, so that there's literally no turnaround time between when they give the verbal and when they get the sort of signature, if that's possible, depending on how detailed your sort of proposals are. But wondering what both of you have seen.
From my angle, what we actually do is that when we in our sales cycle, when we go to the point of, Mr. Customer, I'm going to be sending you a proposal for the services that we talked about today. We'd like to get that to you by first thing in the morning. We actually schedule the appointment for 24 hours later to review the proposal, so that it isn't, you'll know if there's a commitment to the value that you brought to the sales call, if they commit to that next appointment by gaining agreement on it before you send the proposal. And so what we've done is actually shortened the cycle down to within 24 hours to say, we're going to have that meeting to review any questions you have. So it has worked out very well for us to be able to do that at the time before we're sending the proposal.
Love that.
Wow, that's a very nice insight. I mean, I got to copy that from you, Bill, straight away next week. So yeah, in our case, I mean, we give usually a few days actually, because most of the time when we speak to folks, they don't have any availability tomorrow. So even though we will, try and, let's review that, ASAP, and so we can get, everything going. We do find a problem that people's calendars are really full. They just won't have the time for it. So we do, it takes us usually a few days, so 3 days. We book the next sort of follow-up, and we kind of go through the proposal and kind of walk through. But yeah, it's our sales cycle is significantly longer than yours. But yeah, amazing to hear from you, Bill, that within 24 hours you're looking to close that. But yeah, I'm just thinking of that.
And
It is definitely a challenge, right, to be able to get the person next day, right, back on a call and going through that proposal and answer any questions and tackle them.
at least you have, and it might not be a day or 2 days, but at least you gain commitment from the client. Maybe it's 3 days, maybe it's 5 days, but booking that appointment for reviewing any questions they might have sets you up for that next call, so that they've given you the okay that, yeah, you might be the company for us. Let's just make the numbers work.
Definitely. If you get any rejection from that booking that call, then there's something up, and you can address that
by the value of what you sold.
Yeah, I love that. The question we normally get when we talk about that sort of 24-hour turnaround, because it might not be reasonable for everyone, is like, well, how do you get it together quickly? And I think this is one of the biggest differences of someone who might still be using Microsoft Word or something else, or recreating every proposal from scratch. It's just use a template as much as you possibly can. Depending how bespoke or productized your service or product is, there's different levels here, and there are different strategies you can use. But anything that is typically the same from one deal to another, make sure that you have it super solid. Make sure you have assets prepared for that prospect, depending on what vertical they're in, what product they are looking at, or what service they're looking at for you, case studies, your kind of service or product listing, the things that never change. Make sure that is good to go, and you can put that together as quickly as possible, so that you can shorten that time when they give you've had the call, what they want, so you can put that proposal together as kind of fast as possible. So a lot of people, I'm happy to see that most people say that they do create a proposal from a template. Some people still duplicate, and only a few people are still starting from scratch. But that's one of the ways to kind of speed up that process.
Yeah, I'm personally a big believer in templates. I think every business I've been in, I've been always using templates, literally, and it just speeds up, because you want to eliminate those repetitive tasks as much as you can. And yeah.
Bill, what are your type of template strategies within One SEO?
Well, we offer a full-fledged product. So, what we have done is we'll have clients that come to us for a la carte process, social media management, or we'll have somebody that'll come to us for PPC management only. So what we did is we created a master template that had every potential service, and then we created every potential possibility of templates that we could potentially use, whether it was SEO and social, whether it was SEO PPC and social, whether it was SEO PPC email and social, so that the time frame to be able to deliver a proposal based upon the services that we were offering, it's immensely. I probably find myself duplicating more than going back to original templates. But I think my staff probably goes, and that's just because I'm probably being a little bit lazy at times, but either way, the time to, it used to take 25 minutes to put a proposal together based on the way we were going through Microsoft Word. We can get a proposal together in 4 to 5 minutes, utilizing the template aspect based on what the services are and what the client's budget is, and the information that we gain through the sales call process. That it's so efficient. And when you tell a client that you can get them back a proposal, and by the end of the day, generally they're thinking, how are you doing this? And they're trying to duplicate it into their efforts of, how did you get me that? And then we utilize it as well to bring other businesses back to Proposify.
I love hearing that. And you're using one of the most common template strategies that we see and recommend, which is like put it all in one document and then delete the stuff you don't need. And I think this isn't unique to Proposify. This is unique to any sort of template strategy or documents that you're putting together. It is much easier to remove than it is to add in a lot of times with these documents, because it's net new creation versus slash. So in terms of a time aspect, yeah, have everything you could possibly need. And I love that idea of like taking away the stuff that they didn't need, and the stuff that's left over is exactly the perfect things that they needed, and you had that prepared ahead of time. It's a great recommendation. Awesome. We talked about time killing all deals, and also things that have changed in the last year with COVID. And I love seeing that all of these recommendations that we're making here are either being implemented or there are other external factors that are changing the way that we do business, because deal velocity over the past year and the year before that actually are increasing. So the time to create and send a proposal over the last year is 19% faster. The time from when you send it to when your prospect or client opens it is 18% faster. And the total time from when they open it to when you win is increased by 44% as well. So across the board, all of the metrics of when from you sending it to you win, them signing off and winning the deal, it's all gotten faster this year. And part of me thinks that COVID could be in play here. It's like when there's a legit deal to be done, the deal is going to be done. And otherwise it may not have come through your door. I know that that's something we noticed on our sales cycles. We had fewer tire kickers and fewer people that were just trying to, this might be okay. I want to get budget a little bit later. I'll consider it. Less of those types of conversations and more of the, nope, we need this now sort of conversations. Wondering if Bill or Frank, if you've seen something similar.
Yeah, I mean, definitely creating these proposals, we've eliminated quite a bit of time when we invested into kind of using templates. So and it allows then the sales reps to actually focus on selling, right, and really on the activities that actually bring more sort of revenue to the company. So yeah, we did also see a similar pattern over the last sort of 12 months. That things have gone significantly faster. And I think the major contributing factor there is, I think, the COVID factor there, for sure. I'm very curious, actually, as we progress towards the end of the year, how this will change, right? So as the folks around the world getting vaccinated and kind of maybe things will going back to normal, what will the new kind of data say in 2021? Patrick, I'm wondering what's your take on this year? Do you see that things will remain stable or?
Yeah, I hope so for everyone's sake, obviously. One thing I really want to see, I want to see the deal velocity staying high, because I think that across the board, if you're doing the right actions within your sales process, we want to keep that going and keep that trend up across all business. It means that you're creating better relationships, you're communicating your value a lot better. And if you can use tools to support that as well, I definitely would love to see more businesses kind of take that approach. And then in terms of business success, I wish everyone the best in 2021 and 2022 in terms of what they're able to accomplish as we all kind of hope get back to and thrive through the next decade or so.
My viewpoint on this is it is directly related to COVID because of the remote work environment. Productivity, at least in our company, and I can't speak for every other company, our productivity went up when we went remote tremendously. For people not leaving their email or not leaving the work environment. And I think that's why so many businesses are going to continue to say that you want to work as a remote employee, great. We knew your productivity went up because you weren't traveling. My travel to and from our office is, I lose 10 hours a week. When I'm in a remote environment, that's 10 hours of time to be able to help grow the business, be able to work, be more effective, efficient, working with our people as far as, these aspects. So I think that as businesses stay in a modified hybrid remote environment, you're going to continue to see deal velocity increase as far as that aspect of the business.
Yeah.
Love it. We got one more juicy stat. Oops! Before we get to questions, I love this one. I think it goes into the way that buyer behavior is evolving a little bit of giving choice creatively as ability for prospects to upsell themselves. May not be for every business model and everyone, but we have seen a lot of customers get success out of this when you give options or add-ons, especially to a product or a service where there might be a core tiering structure in terms of certain things where you can do the psychological effects of anchor pricing. If you heard of that, it'd be like, okay, small, medium, large, and you really just want them to go to the medium, and you make the small plan is missing not really enough of what they needed, and the big one is like a little bit overzealous, but maybe they're gung-ho and they want to go there, but you ultimately want to find them in the middle. But then there's other things that you can add on top of that. So they go to the middle plan and give options for like, okay, if pick this plan, but for this extra bit more, you'll get this extra level of service, or you get this extra onboarding or things like that, and give them that choice to kind of upsell themselves. It wasn't part of the base package, but if they have the option there to choose it, or also a range of, depending if there's a volume play going on in something from a widget, whatever you're selling, to give them the ability to play around with with how many of those they're actually selecting. I've seen good success on other customers on that side. And so we've seen just on average close rates going up about 12.6% when you give prospects the option.
And I think it also impacts the retention rate really, because people just getting what actually they need. So I call that consumption-based pricing, right? So if that's exactly what I need, they buy that, fantastic, right? So and that I think helps really with retaining clients as well. So they don't feel like they're overpaying as well for the services. So they're getting they're paying the right price for what exactly they need. And that's something we've been doing actually relatively successful here. And I think not just it doesn't just help with closing, but also with retaining the clients long time as well.
It isn't part of our business plan. It isn't part of our business plan as far as giving that option pricing. However, what I would recommend if there was an option pricing environment is not to go with the three pricing structure, but to go with the 4 pricing structure, because you have 4 different personality styles that sit out there. And if you try to wedge everybody into 3 different options, good, better, best, there's one personality, and that's the driver, that you're not going to fit into that particular model, because he's going to think that you're trying to put him into that middle wedge, and you're probably going to lose it. So if I were going to go to a pricing model, I would definitely offer 4 options, not 3.
Oh, it's good insight. Good insight. Yeah, and you could probably test that as well. Which ones are your proposals with a 3-tier option versus a 4-tier option? Which one had a higher close rate? Now you'd have to be willing to put that test in play, and maybe you're willing to test it or not, but I'd be really curious to see that.
Yeah, that's an interesting insight. Yeah. I never thought about 4. So yeah, something as well to think through.
Yeah. Awesome. That was our last stat of the day, but we've got some time here for questions, and I'm just going to give the little shameless plug. I don't think it's that big of a plug because it's ultimately free, but Proposify does have a free option for this. So there's kind of, if you want to check it out and try it out, you can sign up at proposify.com/free. And that's, I'll be honest, it's meant for the individual seller. So if you're an individual seller in your organization, you still get these proposal metrics of what's going on with your organizations. And then ideally, as you grow and scale your organization and get to the scale that Bill's been able to have success with one SEO, maybe that's something you can consider. So I'll throw that out there.
Fantastic. So just looking at the questions from the audience, maybe let's tackle a few of them. Maybe a first question to you, Bill. So what else, which other teams are using currently One SEO? So I presume it's not just the sales team, but also account management teams or other teams?
Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunities where we have additional upsells after, we kind of go through a process that when we onboard a client, they get turned over to the onboarding team, and then they get turned over to the client relations team. When the client relations teams have additional opportunities from website design and development, or additional content strategies, or email marketing, or different products that we might, have, the account management teams as well are taking the opportunity to use it. So we have kind of the way that our structure is. We have 2 director of operations that will put those additional agreements together and then upload them into Salesforce as well, so that we can continue to watch the flow of revenue being not only on what sales is doing, but what client relations are doing, and then they're both held accountable to specific metrics.
Going to the other question, maybe for you, Patrick. What are some of the maybe unusual ways that folks are using Proposify out there?
Definitely. It won't be unusual, but we know a lot more people are using Proposify now, from not just the sales side, but the customer success retention side, like Bill was talking about. But we actually, on our side, we try to drink our own champagne or eat your own dog food, whatever the story is, as much as you can. So we're using Proposify right now for a lot of marketing collateral, and also like smaller pieces of sales collateral in terms of account-based marketing or outbound sales initiatives. So I don't love the term one pager, but that sort of concept and idea of documents that you might be able to send to a prospect and still get the same open metrics and view metrics to see if they looked at it. So, and we actually put our state of proposals in Proposify and send it out that way, either to individual leads and prospects, or through to the masses, and we can kind of get some of our own metrics and behavior on how people consume that content. So although I'll be honest, it's not the main use of the product, there are other use cases of if you want to send an individual a document, you want to see that they opened it or they looked at it or get a signature, there's nothing stopping you from using Proposify to do that.
Fantastic. The other question goes here. Do you see any sort of geographic differences, let's say, between Europe and US?
Yeah.
Regions?
The only major thing that I've heard of, and I don't have any exact data to sort of back this up, it bases on maybe how business is just done differently, and therefore how proposals and proposal software and just sales documents in general use. And I've actually seen more of a sort of a full funnel sales customer success approach, like Bill was talking about, in European countries than we do typically in the US. In the US, it's a little bit more straightforward sales usage across the board. This is average, but I agree with Bill. I don't think that should be a unique thing to any other geographies at all. I think that should be a best practice kind of across the board. But that is one thing in terms of the style of relationship of selling, I think, is a little bit more full funnel from what I've seen in European countries, where there's less of a handoff and usually of a longer term one person relationship. And that may be the case.
The other question is, I think, a pretty good question. Any insights that you've seen sort of desktop versus mobile? So
yes, we have stats, didn't make it into this presentation, but the majority of documents still being viewed on desktop devices in a B2B aspect. So I think it was 75-ish% still on desktop, but that's not to ignore the other ones at all. And so, yeah, think about how your documents could be viewed. It's about 20% on desktop, about 5% on mobile or tablets, I think, if I remember correctly. So there definitely is usage there, and you can only assume that that's going to continue to go up from that perspective.
I'm just curious, have you seen any sort of conversion rate differences, mobile versus desktop?
I have not, actually, to be perfectly honest. It's a good question, though.
Anything you noticed, Bill, around sort of desktop versus mobile usage?
I know I spend much more time in the mobile app.
Me too.
Because I'm watching what's happening from the opportunity as far as where they're interacting with it, and it's not like I'm looking at the dashboard as much on my desktop as I am my phone. But I would have a tendency to believe, just based on the nature of what we're seeing statistically, that we have higher open rates as far as with what's happening from a desktop to who our client is, and the nature of the people that we are working with. And I think it'll change depending upon the type of business that is using Proposify and what kind of client that they have.
So roughly similar on our end. So, but we are definitely seeing that more and more. We're seeing kind of mobile going up quite a bit on our end, and I think that's going to continue to do so. as things become easier on mobile. I think the mobile, if you can read, and digest the content on mobile as effectively on desktop, then why not? I think there's some challenges with some of the platforms sometimes to do so, but I think that has been, over the years rectified. So, but yeah, when I'm thinking about myself, I do read quite a few proposals on mobile, but then when I need to get my team involved, but then, yeah, naturally, right? So we probably have a team meeting or whatever, go on Zoom, and then we would, go with that proposal. So that's why the usage would be high there. But yeah, if you're, I don't know, on a tube in London somewhere, going for an hour, 2 hour commute, going to work, you're like, oh, let me just, go through that proposal while I'm in the tube, and then going into work, right? So, but yeah, I think looking at where the world moving, I think that should probably increase. So yeah.
Absolutely. I think that supports the length of the document conversation as well, as just knowing your end customer, what is their behavior, how to like to consume that sort of content. And if you're on the tube in London, you probably you're not one of the time maybe to go through that level of detail.
Yeah. All right. Fantastic. So I really appreciate of your time, Bill and Patrick, for attending the webinar and sharing the insights. I think this is where the whole world should be moving towards, of automating all the proposals. I know the pain, and automation is the key, the way going forwards. And there's great, solutions like Proposify out there to tackle that need. So I'm a big fan myself. So yeah, I appreciate it. How can people reach out to you if they want to?
Yeah, absolutely. You can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn's probably the best place. Search for Patrick Edmonds and you should be able to find me. Please add if you have any questions, and check out proposify.com.
Fantastic. And for you, Bill, I assume it's the same?
Yeah, same thing. Bill Russell. You can find me on LinkedIn, or just go to oneseo.com and you'll find me there. And if you're on the fence as far as using Proposify, please don't hesitate to give me a call. I'll tell you, it's the best solution that we've ever had.
Fantastic. Likewise, guys, if you want to find me on LinkedIn, Frank Saunders should be the first guy in the list, probably on there. Cool. Thanks, guys.